Causing me a bit of an issue here and there. So let's go ahead and begin an opening prayer. Cody, would you like to take that? So for those of you who have the lesson book, we are on page 194, 194. And so it'd be chapter 19 on page 194. For those of you who are trying to follow along. So I changed the title just a bit. I believe Cody had it down as, put it back over there, Speak Destiny into Your Children. I changed it just a little bit into Empower Your Children. I do that, made that slight change because that's sort of the way we train our officers and NCOs, is to empower your subordinates by giving them the problem set and the resources, and then initially mentor and guide, and then finally let them fly on their own, which is sort of like left and right limits and a timeline, and just let them accomplish the mission, even if it's not exactly the most efficient way or the way you would do it. So long as it's legal and moral and meets the timelines, then it is a success. And really, for those of us who are starting to experience the children leaving the nest, that's sort of the way you have to prepare. So let's start off with our, what was the memory verse for Sunday? Luke chapter 2, verse 19. Again, Luke chapter 2, verse 19. Give you all a moment to get there. Excuse me. But Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. So did she just stick them in a scrapbook? Do I have any scrapbookers here? People who engage in scrapbook? One or two? So really, what's the purpose of a scrapbook? Is it just to put it together and lock it away? Old memories, yeah. And? What about them? To capture memories, events. But I had a cousin that was trying to regenerate the family tree on on my mom's side. And she spent a great deal of effort. And every time she got a hold of one of those old scrapbooks where it actually documented family history, or old Bibles that had the family trees in them, some of which have been embellished with cut down photographs of each individual as well. That's what Mary was doing. Obviously, I think this is a bit before color photos and scrapbooking as such, right? So she didn't just put them there. It says that she pondered them. Meaning she kept thinking about this. Okay, what does this actually mean? What was it the priest said when we took Jesus there for his circumcision? Oh, I can now go to God. His lamb has arrived. And, that caused people, well, lambs are used for something else, right? So she had what we call in high school when we were going through books, what they call it, foreshadowing. Able to figure out what's going to go on because you've been given clues on where everything is going. So what is our task then with our children? I put down our task and purpose is to empower the next generations with an S, so more than one. And in that line, I would pose to you a question. How many of you have pets? Or have ever had pets? Rocks don't count for Arizona residents. How did you train that pet? Think about that for a minute. Okay, I'm hearing you don't train cats, they train you. I hear treats. How many of you ever heard of Pavlov's dog? You want to tell us about Pavlov's dog? Please, yes. So,
what he did was he set up the stimulus bell, rang the bell, and the dog, rang the bell, then the dog, rang the bell, then the dog. After a while, what happened was he rang the bell, the dog started out.
how many have seen the Trombone Farmer on YouTube or Facebook? It's a farmer that drives his truck out to the edge of the fields, lots of hills. He puts the hay out for the cows. Then he sits down in a folding chair, pulls his trombone out, and begins to play. And so he'll play a few chords. He'll stop, and in the distance you hear moo, and he plays it again. And then the moos are getting more and louder until they come up. Locate where he's at by the playing of the trombone, knowing that there's going to be food there. And a stampede of cattle just running because they know, food. There's also a experiment done in a zoo. In a gorilla enclosure, attendants went in and hung a small basket of fruit with all of the favorite fruits and vegetables of the gorillas hanging up above this platform, so they'd have to get onto the platform to get to the fruit. But every time somebody got up onto the platform, they would all get the fire hose. And so eventually that group of gorillas figured out anytime we go for that fruit, we get the fire hose. So they stopped going for the fruit. Then they took one gorilla out and added a new gorilla. When the new gorilla saw the fruit and the vegetables, it went towards the platform. All the other gorillas beat the snot out of it because they didn't get the fire hose. Of course, that poor new gorilla doesn't know why this is a social norm. He just knows this is a social norm. If you go for that basket, the other guys beat the snot out of me. And eventually they just kept doing this and replacing until there were no gorillas that had ever been hit with a fire hose in that enclosure. But every time they added a new gorilla and he went for that basket, the others beat the snot out of him because it became the social norm. So that is training, right? And if you look at the media, if you say you're a Christian, those are those other gorillas that no longer know why that they have to beat the snot out of the guy that says he's a Christian. All they know is that's a social norm and they have to do it. Okay. It's constantly changing. Don't even try to keep up.
But so you think about that, and basically the whole article was how they are legislating sexual indoctrination. Now they don't word it that way. That's what's going on, and they're very proud of it. And they talk about how even though previously there have been laws against doing what they're doing, they had a bunch of workarounds as far as how to manipulate it and the society, right, the culture to accept it, even though it's not, even before it's legal, how to get people to accept it so that it can become legal.
Absolutely. So you do see that going on. But back to empowering our children. We got a little picture there by the front door. It says, if we do not take care of new Christians, somebody else will, and it's got like a little devil there at the end of it. What do you guys think of that? Okay, I got one person saying it's true. Anybody else? It's sort of a bold reminder of a truth, right? If we don't take care of each other and our children, our, quote, public school system, commercials, cartoons, Wheaties boxes are going to set the agenda in our absence, right? So what is more effective in training your pet? Small, mild rebukes? Or harsh and degrading yelling and perhaps beatdowns on the dog? What happens if you beat a puppy? For a while. What happens when it becomes a big dog? Yeah, all you did was turn a small, lovable puppy into a really mean, large dog. So it's not just empowering, it's how you empower, right?
When I think through a lot of that type of stuff, primarily proves itself through the fullness of discipline. I don't think
Consistency,
yeah,
right.
well, if it's predictable, if the discipline is predictable, then I don't think that this will end up with a mean dog. If the discipline is unpredictable, then the dog has the ability to react to chaos. But with that, there's people who do that to an abusive standard, and there's people who don't. And my thought has always been that with discipline kids, because that's really what we're talking about is discipline kids, that is an example, right?
Absolutely.
So with the discipline of kids, I always say you as little as possible have corrective behavior. And so in as much as, just a look is corrective behavior, then that's all it needs. But if a look doesn't correct behavior, then you might have to say, hey, if that doesn't correct behavior, you might have to snap, right? And if that doesn't correct behavior, you might have to grab somebody by the arm. If that doesn't correct behavior, you might have to actually spank their stinking butt, right? You might have to take everything away from them. I don't know. Who knows what, right?
Burn all their Legos.
Different levels of discipline, but every scenario should be different. But the thought is, and each one
I would definitely agree with that. And so earlier we heard one of the ways to train a pet is with treats. So praises and treats generally do well with training dogs. Yeah, cats are a bit more independent-minded. Yeah, they actually can be trained. It requires somebody that is a bit more skilled at cat personalities than I. So how would we... There's a reason I'm not a fisherman. And how is children different? So the praise and treats, the praise obviously literal, right? Treats can be literal or figurative. Math for dessert. So what do you think? If he says that much. So what else? Anybody got any other thoughts on that one? Before I move on? Absolutely. Some of my greatest frustration when I began my career in the Army is they give you all these rules, but they don't give you the reasons behind the rules. And so if you want to know, either you have to find a mentor that's willing to pull the curtain back, or you got to go digging through a lot of research going all the way back to the Dark Ages in European armies to find out why certain things are done certain ways. It's because several times we tried them other ways and it worked not well. Just to keep it short, it worked very not well. I think one of the greatest things I saw was from, I was taking the field sanitation course, and they gave us a one-paragraph marker on field sanitation from the American Civil War. Okay, so it explained how far away latrines need to be, how often people need to shower at a minimum, and stuff like that. And then for their justification, it simply said, the coffee tastes better when the latrine is downstream. Yeah, exactly. Did they really? They could have used more words, but would they have said any more? So it's sort of a peek behind the curtain. Okay, this is why we are doing all of this stuff. And they give that, and you're like, oh, okay, Roger, got it. It was a very good example for everybody in the class, and we all reacted the same way. You know, everybody's lights go on, and the disgusted face goes on, and okay, yep, that means you got it. So let's take a look at Proverbs 18:21. Proverbs chapter 18, verse 21. Give you all a second to turn there. My apologies. The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. So is that positive or negative? Both. How so? Cody. Right. Absolutely. So my next question, I think we've already engaged, and that is it for good or for evil? And I would say, like a car, an axe, spear, or even a gun, it depends. What are some examples where cars were used for evil? The vehicle terrorist attacks? What else? Drive-by shootings, very good example. Car bombs, either parked or suicide. Or DUIs, right? So if you recklessly endanger others or purposely endanger others. What about for good? What are some examples of vehicles being used for good? Meals on Wheels. There you go. I didn't write that one down. That's a good one. Going to church. Joy bus. Yeah, everybody remembers joy buses. Ambulances, fire trucks. Mobile vet clinics, okay. Only for cats. So what about axes? Cut down wood. Okay, so depending on where you are on global warming, that could be go either way, right? But okay, what ways could axes be used for evil? Kill somebody. Who remembers the original Shining? Honey, I'm home. Probably not the best use of an axe, right? What else? What about for good? Firewood, log cabins, fireman's tool, rescue, yeah. Protect your cell phone? Oh, okay. I'm sort of confused on that one. I'm interested to hear that after service. I'm sorry, could you speak louder on that one? Oh, okay. Cut down trees is a little bit more durable than breadcrumbs that Hansel and Gretel used, yeah. Okay, so that took a couple of turns I wasn't expecting. This congregation is always good for that, to keep me reacting. Okay, so we can say the same for spears and guns, right? On where all of those can be used for good or for evil. One of the guys I served with in Italy had staff duty, went home the next day, heard somebody at the door, so he went to find out what was going on and found like a 4 or 5 man robbery crew trying to break into the front of his house. And he would be very upset with me if I do not say the type of axe he used. So he pulled an axe off his wall, because his front room was like a dojo instead of having a TV. So he pulled off a bearded axe. I still need to look that up and see what the difference between a bearded axe and a regular axe is. I guess it was old. I don't know. Okay. Well, he misjudged the distance, thankfully for this home intruder, and put it into the door frame above the door. So he ended up not getting any sleep that day because first he had to fill out the police reports. Then he had to go get on his company commanders and then battalion commanders and then brigade commanders' carpet to explain what happened. And why in Texas, where you can carry just about any gun up to anti-aircraft, he would choose to use a medieval axe. And he would correct each commander, no sir, a bearded axe. And then go off into that sidebar conversation on, okay, what's a bearded axe? So, used in home defense. Luckily, all he did was scare him and mess up his door frame. Because the axe was there, he couldn't pull it out without cutting part of his door frame. And, of course, every cop within the county came to look, because how often do you repel home invaders with an axe? So every cop showed up to take pictures, selfies. It was, you'd have to know this guy. It was definitely him. So we talked about cars, spear, axes, where they can be used for evil or good. What is mightier than the sword, as the saying goes? The pen. Can anybody think of when the pen was used for great evil? Or more appropriately, the printing press. Yes. I'm sorry, one more? When former President Obama did a lot of his executive orders, there's a lot of people who felt that he may not have been entirely correct with some of the things he instructed. Yes. Especially that. So I've got some evil examples when words are more powerful than swords, particularly whenever they direct the use of swords. Mein Kampf. Who knows what that book is? Translates in English to My Struggle, where Hitler told the entire world exactly what he was going to do, and yet the entire world said, oh, we didn't know he actually meant it, except that he did. Say again? Oh. What about the book called The Prince? It was written with one intent. It was used for the opposite. The book The Prince was a medieval piece of literature with the intent on showing how to be a just king or prince in Europe. But it also got into political intrigue and how to avoid using that for evil. Instead, it was used for just the opposite. It was used to train people how to use evil and terror to maintain power instead of being worthy of the power. So while the intent of the book, The Prince, was to bring about just and honorable leadership throughout Europe, it was used for the opposite. And is still used for that to this day. Mao's Red Book. Who knows who Chairman Mao was? China, yes. The first communist leader of China. He also wrote a book called The Long March, where he talked about the struggles against the Japanese and then against the imperialist Chinese, and how he justified cannibalism whenever supplies ran low. First to the enemy, then the civilians. If those weren't around, then to pick out the weakest in your own ranks. Say again?
Well, when people in their military team, hey, like,
You might want to get a head start on the run. So, Quran. I'm probably touching a political fifth rail there. What's it say to do to the non-believers? Yeah, the sky's pretty much the limits on that. What about where the printing press was used for the power of good? Bible. What about the first part of the Bible, called the Torah, or the books of Moses, right? Definitely. What about the writings of Martin Luther King? Why would I put those on the side of good? Martin Luther King had a few personal issues. So why would I, even with that, why would I put his name and his speeches on the side of good as far as power of the pen? He prevented a second American Civil War that was going to be based on race. The United States lost more casualties in those 5 years than we have in every other war put together, to include World War I and World War II. So preventing a second Civil War, I think, puts those documents in a different light. He was able to talk people back off the ledges and the cliffs where they were trying to push each other off. He gave hope. He gave reason to where there was mass insanity. So that's how I included him on that list. Now, a book I came home and saw Michelle reading one day, and when I saw it, I was more than a little insulted. The Proper Care and Feeding of Husbands. The title alone is more than a little bit patronizing. And she explained that to me, yeah. She sort of walked me through the book. And how much, I think it was Joyce Miller was the author? Okay, apparently not. But when she explained to me what the book was actually advocating, it makes it to the correct list. Although apparently it had a lot of sales among the feminists the first couple of weeks, and then they started reading it and realized what they'd gotten a hold of, which was not a feminist manifesto, which is came across my arm. Oh, okay. Thought something was getting a hold of me there. So what else would you add to these two lists? Is there a document or book or scroll, in the case of the books of Moses, that you think should end up on one of these lists? The Constitution. Well, it was pretty much on the naughty list as far as the British was concerned, right? Okay. Any other? Sounds like I just lost. Hello, hello. Okay, no, it's bad. Any others? The Constitution. Okay, that's good. Yeah, Bishop Martin Luther. where he called out the Catholics' hypocrisies. Any others? Yeah, the Bible, we mentioned that, the Book of Life. And what were the apostles' response whenever Jesus asked if they were going to leave too? Where else would we go? I think that was in your sermon, what, a week ago? Where else would we go? You have the words of life. What about on the naughty list? To use the Santa Claus metaphor. Anything by Mr. Marx? Yeah. And of course, the counter to that would be Animal Farm. So, was Marx necessarily evil? Delusional, okay. Why would you say that? But without looking at second and third order effects, is communism, as written by Marx, evil? I hadn't thought of that. Cody. So, like the facet that Mike revealed to us there, says it has a lot to do about free choice and allowing people to embrace the second, third order effects of their freedom. If you want to go out in Montana in shorts and flip-flops in the winter, is that necessarily a good choice? Who's lived in the northern regions? Would that be a good attire choice? Not even in the southern regions. But for limited times, right? You're not going for a 5-mile walk that way. Please. There's absolutely that. I'm sorry, what? The Catholics, right? Well, the Catholics. They're the ones that canonize the Bible we currently use. There are a couple of other canonizations of the Bible out there, the Ethiopian Bible being one of them, and I'm trying to remember what the other one was. That is basically widely accepted, just not necessarily in North America or Western Europe. Never claimed that it did. So, with all this that we've just discussed, how are we going to implement this into our lives about empowering the next generation? The LTC program, I think, is not just a good start, but a very good program heading in that direction. And everything we do to prepare them for that meeting is very good. With the adults and between the children. I've seen some of the children, out in the parking lot, probably not where they should be doing it, considering, vehicles or, well, I guess if it's a smart car, it's only like 300 pounds. But for any real car, you're talking at least a half-ton, 1,000-pound vehicle, right? So kids standing out in the parking lot where they can get backed over is probably not the best of plans. So I've seen that peer-to-peer mentoring occurring even among the children. So definitely empowering them. So what are some of the programs we're doing with Leadership Training for Christ? Oh, really? Well, I've heard of that, but only really for missionaries and pre-seminary schools. Yeah, I do believe that Christianity is underrepresented on a lot of these platforms, partly out of peer pressure and partly out of, I was going to say, improperly motivated protections on the sites, where you have basically the atheist with the keys to the bullhorn. And they will basically take the keys away from you anytime that you are saying something that would cause them to have to do a self-assessment on the nature of their own life choices. That may just be my perception, but that is sort of what I've been seeing. Denomination. I mean, ish. It was signed this morning by the governor. Alabama. No, he signed it this morning. A lot of the left-wing groups that do understand history fear the battles of Lexington and Concord from the day that our revolution actually started. And that's whenever the preachers led their congregations, they called them the Black Robe Regiments, and basically fought against the British troops that went to Lexington and Concord to seize the weapons and the powder. So they want to make sure we never get to that point again where the Christians are that active and are willing to put their life where they say their values are at. She's next. I mean, a lot of individuals like that I've had discussions with seem to think that Christians, quote, and thou shalt not judge, pretty much some part of the Bible they can quote, thinks that means you can't argue back or break apart their arguments and show them where they're wrong. And at that point, I usually explain, well, the reason the entire Woods family is in the United States is because we got tired of being tortured to death in England because we refused to use that corrupted version of the Bible called the King James, where they wanted to use a different version of the Bible. And generally, whenever I'm talking to somebody that's King James only, that's enough to trigger them into 3 lifetimes. Because my family was using the Geneva Bible, and that's why we left England and came to the United States, because we got tired of getting tortured over it. Mm-hmm. Yep. Last comment, sir? Oh, Larry? Larry, you'll be last. Okay. Okay, so to wrap up, what we have to do is empower, not the next generation, but the next generations. Because what happened with Joshua? Joshua's generation was fine, their kids were fine, but their grandkids did not know God or respect Him. So when I say we need to empower not just the next generation, but the next generations, multiple, in order to, well, sort of like the way the Congress deals with debt, kick that down the road, and get as many generations saved and God-fearing as possible. Tony? I'm sorry, Mark. Absolutely. Starts with each of us. Cody? Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. Excuse me. So what I would ask you to think about between now and Sunday is what else can we do to make this happen? Individually and collectively, or even in small groups. How are we going to execute this? How are we going to make sure the next generation and the generation after that knows God, fears, and loves Him? We have to talk about it. We have to not be cowed by social media. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, children have just come back. Any announcements? Shane will be here Saturday. Okay. Okay. I'll go to Apocalypse Arms, get a couple of condemned, put nuclear radiation signs on the doors. Just make sure he knows that he's getting a warm welcome. Michelle? Saturday. Okay. Let us bow. Dear Lord in heaven, we thank you for this day and this opportunity to come together to comfort and guide each other and sharpen each other. As you said, man sharpens man as steel sharpens steel. We ask you to be with the Halsey family and all of us who are Doris's close friends, and help us through this period of mourning and comfort us with the knowledge that she is with you now. We ask you to be with us and guide us as we all go to our separate places to stay, to watch over and protect us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.